Oh, hi. Welcome to Aquata Zoo, where we like to nerd out over all things zoo and aquarium related. I'm l.semple, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about grudges. What a fun and happy topic, right? I don't know what possessed me to bring this one up, but it's a thing that I have dealt with pretty much my whole life. I feel like a lot of us have. Whether you are a grudge holder, a typical grudge holder yourself, or if you've had someone hold a grudge against you, it happens. And so I figured we should talk about it so that at least what you can control, which is yourself, you can, make better choices about how you're going to handle that. Because it does tend to happen to all of us, whether we intend for it to happen or not. Grudges are a thing that we will run into when we're dealing with other people. So I guess first we should probably talk about what a grudge is. So it's like when you've been wronged and you're mad about it. Somebody did something or said something that you didn't like, and you get mad about it. You get a reaction. Maybe, you actually have a fight about it. Maybe it escalates. Whatever the case may be. You have an interaction with somebody that doesn't go well, and you're just mad at them about it. And you then alter your behavior based on what happened. So you might give them the silent treatment and not talk to them. You might just avoid them entirely. You might just respond to them in a maybe unpleasant manner. I feel like it's kind of a passive aggressive response a lot of the time. Or maybe you don't even physically in a behavior respond, but you just are mad at them. Like you don't like seeing their face, It's some kind of response that happens within you, and it may become a behavior that's visible or observable externally, but it might just be the way your mind reacts when you encounter this person, when you hear their voice, when you see them in the hall, like that kind of thing. It's just this kind of emotional response that you have based on an event or series of events that involve that person. That's kind of the grudge. I feel weird talking about this because I am personally not a great grudge holder. There are definitely times when I feel like someone's wronged me, but I tend to get over it relatively quickly. Now, there are a few individuals that I've worked with in my life that have repeatedly done things over many years that did not go well with me. And I still think about those from time to time, but I don't feel like it's a grudge necessarily. I try to forgive. I try to forget. I may not fully forget, but I do try to forgive. And so I know if this might sound hypocritical, I'm not sure, but I do really try to not hold a grudge because I don't like it. I don't like the feeling. So it feels weird for me to be talking about holding grudges or not holding grudges and how to deal with grudges because I'm not typically one to hold them anyway. But let's talk about it. It would be great in a perfect world if we could not have the event or the series of events that led to the grudge. If we could go back in time and smooth it all over, or act a little different, or say something else, respond a different way, that kind of stuff. Hindsight's 2020, and it would be nice to be able to redo those moments. And I'm not saying that if you are angry with somebody or you're hurt by someone that you should forgive them and move on with your life necessarily. This is something that's very personal, and what I do may not be what you do, and it also could depend on the severity of the issue that you had. I can't say that, say you had a spouse cheat on you, that you should not hold a grudge. That is totally up to you and your spouse, but I do want you to consider how that grudge might be impacting you. And so I don't have the answers for you. Should you hold it? Should you not? I don't know. It's up to you. It's a totally personal choice. And, it's your life. It's your response. It's your decision, ultimately. it doesn't really matter to me necessarily. Although if your grudge is with me, I hope you would talk to me about it so we can iron it out. I've done some wrong in my life, not necessarily intentionally, but it does happen. So if anybody has a grudge with me, please let's talk about it. But anyway, this is a kind of painful experience, right? Usually people don't hold a grudge unless they've experienced some pain and some frustration, some anger, something like really purely emotional. And so I can't tell you whether you should hold a grudge or not, but I do want to talk about them because just like it's kind of a personal decision, a personal feeling to develop that grudge, to hold that grudge, it is also a personal decision and a personal experience about how it affects you and how you're going to respond from here on out. I'd say acknowledge that pain, understand that it's coming from somewhere, and it may not even be the situation at hand. It may be that that other person reminded you of someone else and you did not like it. So maybe that person reminded you of a parent who really hurt your feelings when you were a kid, and suddenly now it's coming up because somehow that person that you work with now reminded you of it, and now you're mad, right? It can stem from pain that you've experienced in the past or you're experiencing as a result of that interaction. There's probably some pain involved. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't hold a grudge. So just acknowledge it and understand it for what it is, and maybe try and recognize whether it's a current thing that is an issue with that person, or are you just mad because they reminded you of something else, some past pain that you've dealt with, that kind of thing. And I'm not trying to get all therapist on you because I'm not certified for that. But I do recommend it. If you need to talk to somebody, please do. There's no shame in it. It can help you out. Go forth and talk to somebody to get over whatever might be troubling you in any capacity. There's always a therapist that's ready to talk or just listen. But another thing you could do is think about how that went down, that whatever interaction that's upsetting you, that's causing you to want to hold the grudge, just think about that situation and maybe the view from the other side, how that other person was responding. And it could be a situation where you're responding to them and then they're then responding to you, and it just gets higher and higher and higher emotionally, and that could be causing the problem. So you're kind of egging each other on as you go, and that may be part of the issue. So if you're looking at it from the other person's perspective, what are you noticing? What do you think? Can you see it from where they're standing? Can you look at it from their perspective and get an idea of why they responded the way that they did, and how they're seeing things and how they're experiencing things? Sometimes doing that, looking at it from the other person's perspective, as difficult as that can be to do, sometimes that's really helpful for you to get an idea of what's really going on. What's the bigger picture here? If you can kind of look beyond your own viewpoint of the situation and kind of open your mind up to more possibilities, sometimes that really helps in understanding where someone else is coming from, and therefore kind of getting closer to maybe the forgiveness, or at least talking it out, or avoiding the grudge, maybe. Now, we've talked about apologizing before and what an important tool that is when you're dealing with other people. In this case, when you're dealing with an interaction with somebody that really just kind of rubbed you the wrong way and you're upset about it, or you're sad, and maybe somebody has asked for forgiveness, but even if they haven't, you might want to consider offering them some forgiveness. Whether you audibly do so, or you tell them, or you communicate with them somehow that you are forgiving them or not, the forgiveness is more about you. It is not necessarily about them. So if I got into a fight with somebody and I was really hurt about it, I could hold a grudge, or I could kind of look at the situation, try to rationalize it a little bit, and decide that this is not going to break me. I don't want to spend one more moment dwelling on this or being reminded of this. And so I make the decision for myself that I'm going to forgive that person. Do they deserve it? Maybe they don't. Should I do it anyway? It's up to me, well, what I want you to ask yourself is, who does this grudge benefit and who does it hurt? Because if you really thought about those questions, you might realize that it doesn't really benefit anyone and you're really only hurting yourself. There was a time when I was an angry pants in my life where I would have a hard time with other people and I would feel wronged and I would feel kind of self-righteous about it, and I would be more of a grudge holder. And I eventually over time realized that I was the only one who was dwelling on this. And that I was the only one who was really causing my own brain pain. Like revisiting this and reminding myself, oh, I've got this grudge against this person. How dare they? They wronged me. And eventually, somehow, by some miracle, I learned that the grudge was only hurting me and it was only holding me back. It wasn't affecting that other person at all. Sure, it might have been annoying then for them to work with me on other projects and having other interactions because I was being a pain about it, because I'd made up my mind that they'd wronged me and they deserved to suffer, right? That was kind of my thinking at the time, but really I was just being very annoying and only causing myself more frustration because I was being so stubborn in holding the line of my grudge and going out of my way to be unpleasant or to give that person the silent treatment or just avoid them altogether. And it wasn't helping the situation. Now, especially when we're talking about work, if you're trying to do this with somebody you work with, you're just holding up productivity. You're just making this more difficult for yourself. You're making yourself look like you're difficult to work with. And that could hurt your career because it shows if somebody notices it. And especially if you are in the situation where you've got a peer that's working with you and you have a conflict and then you hold a grudge and then maybe that person moves up and becomes your supervisor, you're in a pickle now. Like, this is a problem. And so that person knows that you would rather sit with your pride and your anger and not move on and not do the adult thing to do, which is to confront the issue head on or offer forgiveness or, basically navigate this like a professional, right? When you hold a grudge and you're acting on it, it's one thing to just like feel it in your bones. It's another thing to let it shine through your behaviors and your actions. But when you're acting on it in the workplace, you sound and seem so much more immature than you would have if you'd be professional about it and, rise above, I guess. And move on and try to still interact with people that you need to get the job done, like, to meet the goals. If you're dwelling on the poor interaction that you had and you're doing that avoidance behavior or silent treatment or just being passive aggressive in general, you do not look like a professional, and people are going to remember that, unfortunately. So it really hurts you. And the other person could say that they've been trying to work with you, that they've been trying to reach out, that they may not have asked for forgiveness, but they could say that they had hoped that you would still work with them, and then you refused to. So they are putting in at least some amount of effort to try and work with you, but you're mad, so you don't respond. And so that looks bad on you. It does not look bad on them because they made the effort. So I just want you to make sure that if you're going to hold a grudge and you're at work and you're holding a grudge with work people, that you really think about that, because it's not benefiting you. It is really only hurting you. And it stinks. I hate that we can't just react the way we want to, I guess, naturally. But, it is a sign of maturity to really be able to reflect on the situation that has occurred and make a decision about how you want to respond to it. Because you can only control yourself. You cannot control that other person. What a perfect world it would be if I could control the actions of the other people that I'm working with. I'm sure those other people would not love that, but, I'd be happy. That's what it's all about, right? No. As much as I would like that, it's not what it's about. because we're working in a group. We're trying to achieve goals together. We have strength in our differences, and that is not how we achieve goals together, right? There's going to be conflict. Not all conflict is bad. Some conflict is good. Disagreements are okay. But, I'm not saying you forgive somebody immediately who did something maybe violent to you or really did something criminally wrong. That's different. But I'm saying if you had an argument with somebody and you didn't like the tone of their voice, or you didn't like that email that they sent, as per my last email, that sort of thing. Yeah, stuff like that happens, but how you move on from it or how you deal with that situation is up to you. It's a very personal decision. I'm not necessarily going to tell you that it's right or wrong to hold a grudge. Every situation is different. I don't know what you've gone through. I don't know what the situation was. And as long as there's nothing like actual criminally wrong with what's happening, you have every right to be upset, and please do embrace that and understand where it's coming from and reflect on that situation. But, I definitely think that you should probably understand or try to understand where the other person was coming from and what their viewpoint might have been, because it might help you just understand the whole situation a little bit better. I've watched a lot and participated in a lot of discussions where people are trying to solve a problem or reach a goal, but they're doing so from vastly different angles. I mentioned that animal care and like education or marketing, they're trying to do the same, like we're all trying to do the same things and progress the goals of progress towards the goals of our organization. But we have very different ways of getting there. So your animal care people tend to be pretty logical. They try to do things in a very kind of routine, methodical way. You go from point A to point B and from point B to point C. Whereas you've got other departments within your organization that think completely differently about that. They're more blue sky and ideas and maybe not the same route that the animal care person would take. Maybe you're trying to design a new exhibit and the animal care person says one thing and the aesthetics or the exhibit design like architect is saying something completely different, because it would look really cool if we did this, but from an animal care perspective we should do that. But ultimately you've got to work together to come up with a goal. And sometimes discussions like this get really, really passionate and personal. Or they feel personal. They're not actually personal. And people come away from that feeling really anxious, frustrated, angry, sad. Just insert your descriptor here. And so when you have these kinds of discussions, especially when you're working on big projects or trying to reach big goals together, that's often when this kind of stuff happens. And so trying to understand where they're coming from and what their viewpoint is might help you to understand the whole situation a little bit better. And trying to figure out how you can still meet the goals with compromise or collaboration can be really helpful. So I'm not saying don't hold a grudge. It's up to you, obviously. But definitely think about the situation. Think about that other person. Think about their perspective on the situation and what was said and what was done, and then decide who is this benefiting and who is this hurting. And you can probably guess that it's really not benefiting anyone, because it's just causing unnecessary friction in your work group or in your organization. And the only person that it's hurting is probably you. So you can decide to forgive. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pull them aside and tell them point blank that you forgive them. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to write up an email and explain why you've decided to forgive them. It just is a mental kind of thing where you've decided, I'm not going to hold this grudge. I'm not going to let this behavior take over me. I'm deciding for my own benefit, for my own mental relaxation, that I'm going to let this go and I'm going to forgive this person. And now, it may not work for every single situation because sometimes people are very wrong and some people do terrible things. Sometimes you're not ready to forgive. And sometimes it's just too fresh. You can't forgive. And that's okay. But just understand that your behaviors are always being watched by people around you, whether it's your family or friends or your coworkers. And the way you're always a role model. So the way you respond, they kind of take that in and kind of evaluate, is that the right way to respond? Is that how I should respond to things? And so whether we like it or not, you're a role model. I'm a role model, you're a role model, we're all role models in some capacity, and you don't even know it. You don't even know who's watching and who you're influencing. And so definitely take a moment to think about it and decide what you want to do and how you want to respond and be deliberate about it. And just understand that if you decide to hold a grudge and you make the choice to alter your behavior towards that person or those people, you give them the silent treatment, you avoid them, you just do all of the things to try and not interact or make that person's life less great. Anything that you decide to do is going to reflect on you as a person or reflect on you as a professional. And I'm not perfect with this. I know that I try desperately to forgive some people who have frustrated the heck out of me in my career. I try almost every day to forgive, and it is a process. It takes a while, and sometimes there are some things, some individual interactions that we've had that I'm just not ready fully to forgive, and I try really hard to forgive, and I feel like I'm almost there. It's been a while. But sometimes, even still, sometimes those behaviors get the better of me. I want to avoid. Because I'm just like, this person doesn't deserve the benefit of seeing me or hearing me or meeting with me or talking to me. Because I don't want to deal with it. It happens. I'm not perfect. I'm still learning to do this, and sometimes this is quite a process. And so I just want you to know that I understand. Even though I don't consider myself much of a grudge holder, over years and years of abuse, I guess, things develop, and it's hard to just let it go because it didn't happen overnight. It certainly isn't going to be fixed overnight, So I try to forgive. I try to think of the situations from the other person's perspective, and that's given me quite a bit of healing, I would say, and understanding. And no, that person was not the perfect person to be in that position. We disagreed a lot, whatever. We fought about stuff. And there were some times, a few instances where things went over the line. And so I'm not quite ready to forgive those yet. But overall, I'm trying to forgive as best I can. And so I just look at it. I remember how I felt while all this was going on. And I have to decide what's going to benefit me. It does not benefit me to avoid. It does not benefit me to hash all this stuff out over and over again. It doesn't benefit me to remain in the grudge. And I don't really feel like I'm in a grudge still, but I do some of the behaviors on occasion. I do avoid a lot. Not a lot, but when I have the chance to deal with that person, I just kind of don't. Because it's not my favorite thing to do. And I know that reflects on me, but it's a process. I'm trying to be kind to myself. I'm trying to really get over and forgive. My goal is to forgive. My goal is to forgive and move on and be a better person. And so if you find yourself in this situation where you've got a grudge or you've got several grudges and you are the type to hold on to them until the end, just understand what that looks like. You being a role model, because you are, even if you don't realize it, how that looks, how other people are experiencing it, how that could come back to bite you later. Because again, if you are moving through your organization You're holding grudges. You're interacting with people in an unfortunate way based on the feeling that they have wronged you, and you're not ready to forgive them or alter your behavior about it. If people are observing that, you're going to garner a little bit of a reputation for yourself for being stubborn, for being, hard to work with, for not being adult enough or mature enough to get over it. You know what I mean? And I don't want that for you. Been there, done that. It's a hard thing to do. And it really does take some reflection and maturity and deep breaths and some painful thoughts about what has occurred and how you feel you have been wronged. It's not fun. It's not easy, but it is something that we have to do if we're going to ever get over our grudges and forgive anybody. And I don't want it to impede your career. I don't want it to impede your relationships with other people, whether they be coworkers or friends or family and that sort of thing. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about some grudges and the fact that they're really only hurting ourselves, right? Because we're the ones not letting go. We're the ones that are thinking about it all the time and how that person wronged us and how angry we were or sad or whatever. And then we let it alter our behavior in a passive aggressive way. And it really just doesn't help anyone. It doesn't encourage the other person to apologize. And if you're mad enough, you're not going to accept the apology anyway. So there's that. And it's not helping anybody. It's only hurting you. Please trust me. I've been there. I've done that. I've gotten better in my old age. I've gotten a little bit better at being able to get over the wrongs quickly. And that really, I'm still working on the ones that have taken years to develop, honestly. So I'm not perfect. Still working on it, but I just wanted to talk about it a little bit because it's really hard to deal with, especially if you're doing it alone. And again, I would definitely suggest if you need to talk to somebody, go see a therapist, or maybe call or text someone that can professionally help you that is certified for that sort of thing. They're usually available through employee assistance programs in the U.S. and they're widely available through various different methods, right? Whatever is most comfortable for you. And if you need to do that to get over the thing, then please do. And I'm not saying that if everyone can wrong you and you're not allowed to respond. You absolutely are. This is a personal choice. I can't tell you what to do or not do. This is just encouraging you to really think about it and dig into those feelings a little bit to understand where they're coming from, why they're there, why you're responding the way you are, and decide if that's what you want. That's what it really boils down to. Is this what I want? The, pain that I've dealt with over the years from issues that I've had with people in my professional life that I really feel wronged me, it's been kind of brutal and I don't love it, but it's taught me a lot. And now I'm trying to educate myself on how to be better and not run into this situation again and help other people deal with it before this becomes a problem. So it's just one of those things. Boy, I wish somebody would have told me when I was a baby aquarist and I was dealing with managers that were not so hot and I was dealing with my own anger and the fact that I was not emotionally mature at the time. I wish somebody would have pulled me aside and said, really think about this. Who does it benefit? No one. Who does it hurt? You. That would have been great. So consider this me telling you, especially if you happen to be young in your career, holding grudges is not worth it. Altering your behavior because somebody made you mad is passive aggressive and not helpful. It only hurts you. It just keeps you dwelling on the issue. That other person is probably not thinking about it. So you're not punishing anyone but yourself. That's the moral of the story. So I can't tell you what to do, but think about forgiving. Think about letting go of that grudge just for your own mental health. Okay. If you have any questions about that or any other leadership or management things, feel free to let me know. And if you want to know more about zoo and aquarium stuff, just write it up in an email. Send it to me at aquatazoo@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, and I hope that you do, don't forget you can follow or subscribe on your podcast player of choice. That way you'll get all of that sweet, sweet content as soon as it releases. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can find me at patreon.com/aquatazoo. And if you're looking to take a vacation and you need a hand with figuring it out, let me know. I happen to be a personal vacation advisor with Magical Vacation Planner, and I would love to help you. It does not cost you anything extra. The links are in the show notes. Okay. Thanks for listening. I heart your faces. Okay, bye.